This is Dr. Chris's Radio Horror program. If you're listening to us online on the Radio Horror channel or on WCW, welcome. Tonight on the show, we have joining me for a great interview with Billy Coyne, who you might know from Rock and Shock and many other projects that he happens to work on. He has been with me for other interviews. Thank you for joining me, Billy.
Absolutely. How's it going, dude?
And we are going to be interviewing Matthew Mungle, the Academy Award-winning makeup artist behind Dracula, the Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992, as well as dozens of other projects like Spider-Man, The Nightmare on Elm Street, The X-Files, and so many more. Thank you for coming on the show with us, Matthew.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Um, where are you located abouts right now, Matthew? Is it how are things where you are? We have somewhat humid weather today here in New England.
Well, I moved my studio from Los Angeles to Austin, Texas, so I'm in Austin, Texas now.
So the temperature hasn't really changed too much.
No, it's just a little balmy today, and it was 70, so it's great.
Where was your shop in LA?
It was on Tahunga Avenue in North Hollywood.
Oh, wow. Okay. I used to live out in Burbank.
Oh, yeah.
Matthew, your special effects studio has worked on more films than I can possibly count. What was it that wanted you to pursue this line of work in particular? Was it a particular film, or was it something in television or anything else, or was it just strictly film that made you want to pursue a career as a makeup artist?
I think it was everything. I think as a kid, I saw Seven Faces of Dr. Lau, and I was just amazed at how William Tuttle turned Tony Randall into those characters. And I was just enthralled by the prosthetics that were used, which I didn't know at the time, and I started learning. And this was when I was about maybe 11 years old or so. And then Planet of the Apes came out in 1968, and that was all she wrote. That sold me, and I was on the track to being a makeup artist.
Started so many people, that movie.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. I had just got done showing somebody Argo, and the special effects makeup artist for Planet of the Apes was instrumental in the the CIA operation of Argo.
Absolutely. John Chambers, great makeup artist, great guy too, by the way.
Yeah, wasn't that John Goodman who played him?
Yeah, that was John Goodman in the film Argo, based on the CIA operation about what country they were. Iran. They were trying to get the 5 hostages out of Iran.
That's cool.
You know, the one film that really has always struck a chord with me, and I'm sure you hear this a lot, is Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I base a lot of my own version of Dracula I'm doing, which is a gender swap version of Dracula. It's a female Dracula, on a lot of the visuals in that movie, including some of the creatures, like the wolf vampire monster thing that Dracula turns into when he assaults Lucy.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that in particular. I mean, there's so many things we could take from it, but obviously that's one big thing that is very iconic for people.
Well, I mean, working on that film was just a dream come true because there was really no visual effects done later or CG work done later. If there was, it was very, very minimal at that time in 1991. And everything was done in camera. And we had second units going on and third units and everything shooting while we were shooting main unit. And there's so much to talk about on that film, but the in particular where Dracula turns into the wolf and has his way with Lucy in the garden was it was an amazing shot to do. We only put Gary in that makeup I believe, one time, and then everything else that was shot was doubles that
Oh
we
wow.
put in that. And also the bat creature too. He was only in it for one long, long day, and then anything else that was shot, like him backing into the closet and all that, was done with a double. And so Gary was only in those really one time.
What does it take? How long do you get to put a suit like that together?
Well, Greg Canham's shop put that together. I think he spent about at least 2 months on that. And then the bat creature was done very fast. Glenn Hans was the main sculptor on that, who also, I see, did The Shape of Water and helped Mike Hill with that and recently. And he's an amazing sculptor. And that suit, that bat creature suit, was done in record time, I think, probably in 3 weeks or so. Of course, they already had Gary's body cast and his head cast, so they could jump on it from there. But that was kind of a last-minute creation of Greg's.
Do you were you involved in every single aspect of special effects makeup for the film for that film, or was it just the creatures?
I was involved in every aspect of the makeup effects on that film. I was hired by Greg Canham to come on and help him, but I did I made all of the vampire teeth for all of the cast in the trailer that we were working on, because I had them there, and we were over at Sony, and Greg's shop was in North Hollywood, so I set up in the trailer to do all of that. And I was hired on maybe a month after Greg got the show. So we were, I didn't work much in his shop, but I worked on the set a lot. And then, of course, I was there all the time doing Gary's makeup with Greg, or if Greg didn't show up, I'd do the makeup by myself with Stuart Ottingstall, and I had our own trailer. So we were constantly doing all of the on-set, Lucy's throwing up, that whole rig on her, decapitation, everything.
Good old decapitations. Actually, I have a question, if you don't mind, because I know how you're talking about Bram Stoker's Dracula here, and how that was over at Canham's shop.
Yes.
And I actually noticed, I was doing a little bit of research, and being a makeup effects artist, I noticed, Stan Winston definitely was a big inspiration, and you as well worked for Stan, it looked like, in the early 90s. I was curious what it was like working for Stan.
Well, I didn't work at Stan's shop any. My first introduction to Stan was in 1990 when I was hired by V. Neal to help her on Edward Scissorhands. And of course, Stan's shop had already made the stuff when I flew to Tampa to help V apply Johnny Depp's makeup. And of course, we went back to LA towards the end of the film and applied Winona Ryder's Old Age. And that's when I met Stan at that time. And we got to know each other. And later in my career, maybe 5 years later, 4 or 5 years later, I think, let's see, he recommended me to do Arnold Schwarzenegger's belly pregnancy for Junior. And
Ivan Reitman.
Yeah, Ivan Reitman. And it was just so nice of him to do that, because then after that I worked on Congo and did makeup effects when they were doing, Stan Winston's group was doing all the gorillas and everything. And it was great working. Stan was a great guy. He was a very talented artist, and he was a great showman too, especially on the set. Just a delight to work with, really.
Nice.
Leading up to the Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, The Dream Warriors, you'd worked on at least half a dozen projects before that, but how did you get involved in the Nightmare on Elm Street?
Just like all of the jobs, you do a job and then you're recommended by another producer. You meet a director. You're recommended by what you do and how you do your work and how you get along with people. And I think I just got a call from Rachel Talloway, was the producer on that. And I think I got a call from her, if I'm not mistaken, and they needed a few filler makeup effects done for the show, because those shows were done so fast, and at that time they would hire 3 or 4 makeup effects companies to do the film because there was so much to do. One company couldn't do it all. So I did a few things on the film here and there, and that's when I met Kevin Yeager. And it just snowballed from there, I guess.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of effects companies during that time, were collaborating. From what it seems like, movies like Freaked and a few companies just coming together because some of these scripts were so ambitious.
Absolutely. And that's, I look back on those times, and when I was working with Jeff Obrow on The Kindred and The Dorm That Dripped Blood and all those slasher films, and
Bride of Reanimator had a huge slew of effects.
All those small films, it was just such a great time because there was no digital effects done, really, to clean makeups up or anything. So what you saw on camera was what you got. And you had to do a really good job. So and fast. So it taught me to think on my feet, and just it was a good time in my career. And you talked to a lot of makeup effects people that were around that time, and I think all of them will lament about that time, and it was the beginning of makeup effects, to tell you the truth.
Yeah,
it's quite amazing some of the people you've gotten to work with. As Billy said, Ivan Reitman, and you worked with Francis Ford Coppola with Dracula, and Steven Spielberg on Schindler's List, and. Is there ever been one director that escaped you that you always wanted to work with? I mean, the list just is so extensive of all the talent. And how closely do you get to work with? How closely does the director work with the makeup artist for a lot of these projects? Or are you left up to your own devices and the wallet of money you need to spend in order to buy the stuff that you need?
Oh, you work very close with the director. I mean, he's the captain of the ship. The producers. Nowadays, they put their 2 cents in because and you'll have 7, 8, 10 producers on a film, and they all want to put their 2 cents into everything, and it gets very convoluted. In the earlier days, you only had 1 or 2 producers and the director, and that's who you answered to. So you work very close with them, and you go directly to them. I mean, one case was William Friedkin. I was mortified to be hired onto that, thinking that I was going to work with William Friedkin, but he was just great to work with. He just once I showed him what I was made of and what I could do, he just let me run with things, and then he'd reel me back every once in a while, and but he was just great to work with. But as far as other directors that I'd like to work with, I don't know. I think my list is exhausted.
Yeah. Plus, you work with a versatile array of different directors. From people that are well known in comedy and in horror. So, would you actually say like there's almost a tone slightly on each different production, just because like one might be horror and one might be comedy.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you know, and you have your screamers and you have your gentle souls, and the more you do this, and the more you get known in this business, the less you want to work with the screamers, the more you want to work with people that are nice and you can collaborate with. One of them, which I've worked several times with, and I just admire so much, is Frank Oz. And he's just such a great guy. And a small story I went back to do, I was working in New York, and I got a call to do a ball cap on Nicole Kidman for Stepford Wives. And I went to the studio, and Frank Oz was directing it, and he comes into the makeup room that I was setting up in, and hey Frank, how you doing? Because we had worked on What About Bob and Dirty Old Scoundrels before that, so we knew each other. And I said, okay, so how do you want to do this effect? He said, no, I don't want to talk about that. He just sat me down. He said, how you been doing? How's life? How's things, and didn't even want to talk about work. Just wanted to talk about how things were going. I mean, yeah. It's such a great feeling to collaborate with somebody that's that nice and worldly, so to speak.
It was great to see Frank Oz return to play Yoda recently in The Last Jedi. And
I was amazed that they used a real puppet on that.
Yeah,
I was just so pleased about that.
That was the best part of that movie. I mean, I know a lot of people are like ripping the film apart, but it's like, did anyone notice that Yoda was real? Or
I know.
How about the fact that Disney has gone out of their way? Give all Disney all the crap that you want about this, that, and the other thing. But man, they're going out of their way to make things real in Star Wars once again.
I love it. I love it. And going back to that doing puppets and everything, that's why I accepted to work on Salem, the television show, because we did 3 seasons, and Brannon Braga wanted physical effects on the film, and if we had to, we'd enhance them with visual effects. And when they said that in the interview when I went in, I said, sign me up. You don't have to say any more. I'm with you. Because going back to that, what you're made of and doing something physical is what I thrive on.
Salem should never have been canceled.
I know. I should have seen the end of it on the last episode, what we were doing, but I was so involved in doing it. Lee and I were so involved in doing everything that I don't think I really realized that, we're really doing the end here.
Plus, it's also proof that, it's funny how they talked about a few years ago, how they thought makeup effects maybe would die because CG would take over. But it seems like the merriment of both, if used the right way, actually, still can be just as effective. So Absolutely. It's interesting how the technology has changed, and there's almost that no resistance factor where you're not going to grow as an artist. And
no, exactly.
You have to embrace it.
I look at all these Marvel things that are being done today, and I'm sorry to use this language, but they do the makeup half-ass, and the rest of it's done with visual effects. I mean, what artistry is there in that, And I was introduced to this whole mash of visual effects with physical effects on the X-Files when I started working on it. And I loved Frank Spotnik and Chris Carter, how they would get in there and they would just listen to your ideas and work with those. And the visual effects people we'd have we'd talk about it instead of the visual effects people saying, no, don't worry about it, we'll do it,
If you had to pick one episode of your 3 biggest TV series, which I'm assuming would be Salem, CSI, and the X-Files, what episodes would those be?
I think one of the top ones, the older ones, was X-Files Dead Alive, where we had to do the bloated body, and he came back and he was still alive, and he was in the hospital room, and he gets up out of the bed and walks into the shower and sloughs his skin off, and that was just coming up with that makeup effect was very fun.
Was it a waterlogged body, if memory serves correct? Is that what it
Yeah,
was?
it's waterlogged body, and we had to do from the knees down, a little above the knees, and the whole skin sloughing off, and then you see him in his normal look. But coming up with that was just, those physical effects are just, instead of just pumping blood or something like that, or just, I just love those, working those out. You know?
Yeah, experimenting and figuring out what works best. And
if you have enough time, yes.
If you're lucky, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
One production I've always loved. I'm so happy. There's a brand new special edition DVD coming out. I think it just came out, the class of 1999, which definitely has a cult audience. And I was curious if you could talk about the makeup effects on that, if that was animatronics or prosthetics, because I mean that was such a heavy-handed production, and if you could actually touch base on that, I would be fascinated with that.
Yeah, I was hired by Rick Stratton on that, and he and Eric Allard had joined together, and they had already made everything, and I was called at the last minute to come up to Seattle, Washington, and work with Rick Stratton on it. And I was up there for about 2 or 3 months working on that with him. And there was a barrage of just tons of makeup effects. And most of it was all animatronics that Eric Allard had and his company had come up with. And then, of course, Rick Stratton, who's a great makeup artist, and a lab guy, had done all of the prosthetics for it. So there was just a barrage of tons of makeup effects that we did on that.
Plus a hell of a cast too. Did you have much interaction with the cast by chance?
Not too much.
Not too much.
Whoever we had to do the prosthetics with, we'd have interactions with them. But there was a lot of work to be done. We set up in that high school, and we had our own room with makeup effects, so we were always working on something.
Very cool.
I went for, I tried to kind of guide my career into less makeup effects, kind of more realistic things, and old age, and then I'd come back to the blood and gore every once in a while, like Primal Fear, or Congo, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, Primal Fear, actually, it's just a great movie. Mara Tierney is actually a family friend. Just a wonderful film, Primal Fear.
I thought that was just a brilliant film, and Edward Norton was just great.
Yeah.
Is there any particular piece of special effect that you created that maybe the director or the producer, the writer, or storyboard artist had a basic idea what they wanted to look like, but you're the one who is definitely credited for having created that specific look? Like, for instance, Edward Scissorhands, his Scissorhands and stuff. I know those are like drawings of like Tim Burton's, but even then, still, it wasn't brought to life until someone like you did something with Johnny Depp.
Well, yeah, we were mainly involved in his facial makeup. Stan Winston's group made all the prosthetics, but of course they had already done the Scissorhands and everything.
And Mark Rappaport was the supervisor on the animatronics on that shoot, if memory kind of serves correct.
On Edward Scissorhands?
Yeah.
I think so.
I know. Yeah, I mean, because I think with Rappaport, because he was an animatronics guy, and I know he was a big mechanics guy. Because
I never did meet him. We were on the set in Tampa, Florida, and Andy Schoenberg and another guy whose name escapes me were on the set all the time, and also at that time Stan's group had already picked up Predator 2, so they were involved in that, and Edward Scissorhands was kind of a back burner thing for them, I think.
Yeah, I actually, for Edward Scissorhands, I just saw a piece of raw footage from the newest Puppet Master box set, and
Oh,
David Allen in his stop motion. Actually, it looks like his team kind of helped shoot a miniature, which I thought was really interesting.
oh, that's great. I didn't know that.
Um,
Yeah,
as we're recording this, Doc Ray Stoker, who is the great great grandnephew of Bram Stoker, made a comment about the post about you coming on the show, commenting
Oh,
how much of a great guest you are and an impressive find for the film industry on his great uncle's, homage to his great uncle's work, Dracula.
oh, thank you. I appreciate that because, I grew up watching on television, Dracula with Bela Lugosi, and that was another thing that got me in, staying late at night up watching the black and white television, all of the Frankenstein and Dracula and Creature from the Black Lagoon. I just love that.
yeah. I mean, it seems like a whole generation of makeup artists really grew up on the Universal monsters and the Hammer films, which were just so inspirational because it seems like we definitely come from a visual background
Uh,
where we could see something or have a lightning image. And I mean, King Kong is probably one of the most influential,
Oh,
you know, f- yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
And you
films.
mentioned Jack Pierce to somebody, and they go, "Who?" Well, he was the man who created Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Okay, so do a little history. You know.
And I got a kick out of it, finding out how his nephew uh, was Ted Sorrell,
Oh,
who
yeah.
was the Pretorius in From Beyond, which I got a kick out of that because Mark
Oh,
Shostrom talks about that a little bit.
oh, yeah, yeah.
One of my favorite horror films that I think is highly underrated that you worked on is based on the Clyde Barker's work. The Midnight Meat Train has some of the goriest, also the most stickiest looking effects. And out of all your films, I honestly, and there's a lot to kind of go through, but that has to have been like a really disgusting process because there's so much wet, sticky stuff in that
Yeah.
film.
It's Clyde Barker, man. I mean, what else?
It's Clive Barker, and I was very disappointed in that because there was so much that could have been done with the fathers and all of the creatures, and you hardly saw them. And we did so much work, and as you do in film, you have no say in the editing of the ending and or the whatever goes into the film. You just have to do the work, and you'll spend months, and then it'll be on the screen for 1 minute. And that was very, very disheartening, that film. I mean, we did a lot of stuff in it, and it was just not used. But yeah, there was a lot of blood. I mean, once we started using that, it was, I think the only other film that would ratchet it up there would be Natural Born Killers that I worked on that would equal that. But being in that subway and all that blood was that was disgusting.
Are you saying in terms of like stuff that they didn't show, or just like the amount of work you put into the makeup?
Both, both. I
It,
mean, they showed a lot of stuff that we did, but all of the creatures and stuff, I was very disappointed that they didn't show those more. There was supposed to be a father creature at the very end, which was a bigger creature, and it got cut out like halfway through, and it was it was disheartening.
Actually, speaking of being cut, one question I have is: was there ever an effect you were extremely proud of that, like back in the '80s? I know how the MPAA and the
Yeah,
makeup effects community kind of had a love-hate relationship where they were chopping things in certain films. But was there? I mean, I know it's hard to say just one, but is there an effect that you're extremely proud of that was cut that has never seen the light of day?
I can't really think of one offhand to tell you the truth.
But so much was being cut, back in the
Oh,
80s by the MPAA, where, it's ridiculous. It could be like, 1 second of film from like a
yeah,
Roger Corman movie, where
right.
it
With
goes
blood
from,
spurting and
triple X to an R, like with Galaxy of Terror, or it could be, almost a few minutes worth of footage that was cut,
right.
and it might get lost or destroyed, and I hate to say it, almost like what happened to Beekler on,
Oh,
Friday 7. I mean, we
yeah,
would love to see a director's cut of that, but
yeah.
it's frustrating when so many great technicians just execute to the best of their abilities, and it just ends up on the editing room floor. And
Absolutely. And nowadays they just put all the blood in digitally. So
yeah, but thankfully now with also like Blu-rays and special editions
oh
and
yeah.
retrospectives, I mean, if they're able to find it, might not be the best quality, but at least
Absolutely.
they can do something like that.
Absolutely. And that goes back to The Guardian with William Freak and More Blood, and Silver Bullet and all those that I just did some behind the scenes commentary on that. Uh, Silver Bullet and also The Kindred that they're
Do you
going to.
enjoy the commentary process?
Oh yeah, I have to do my research before I go in, and not the commentary, but the little behind the scenes, what happened,
Mhm.
and I have to go back and do my research and pull my files because it was so long ago, and the memory's not as good as it used to be.
Yeah, can't just shoot from the hip. We all got to do some
Oh,
research and development,
well,
even if we do forget.
that was 30 years ago. Let's see what happened then. So,
On Bram Stoker's Dracula, me and a musician, Josh Tate, who does the theme song for my show, Dr. Chris's Radio of Horror, did a fan commentary for that film.
oh, that's great. That's
Yeah, and just before we started recording this, I just did a fan commentary. There's a separate show I do called Film Dungeon Commentary. So
uh
it makes it seem like you can listen to it without having the film. But me and a actress, Andy Noir, did a commentary for Queen of the Damned, and tomorrow I'm doing one for My Bloody Valentine 3D.
Nice.
Oh, great. That's
Chris Carnell.
Yeah, with Chris Carnell.
Yeah.
If there's one film that you missed having an opportunity to work on because you were doing something else, or a film that you passed on because it didn't sound like something you wanted to do, but became something huge, what was it?
I don't. I got so many scripts when I was, bidding things out. I got a script for The Matrix. I got a script for the Men in Black. I got scripts for, just tons of stuff that I knew I didn't have a chance, but I bid anyway.
Did you get to
But
keep
got
these
to
scripts,
read
by the
the
way?
scripts, so it was, I've done what I wanted to do, I think.
Matt,
It seems like it seems like it was a bidding war. Quite a bit actually in the
All the
90s.
time, all the time.
do you
It
get
was
to keep this? Do you get to keep the scripts of the movies you don't work on, or do you have to return them?
Yes. Used to, you could, but lately, like for instance, 10 Cloverfield Lane. The script I got is all red paper, black printing, your name's on it. You have to return the script. J.J. Abrams is very closed about all of those things, which is rightfully so. I mean, when Cloverfield came out, I was just like, where'd this come from? Because he had kept it so much in wraps, and it's kind of nice to see films like that every once in a while done that way.
Yeah. Just having I can't even say it, anonymity while you're just making it and then releasing it, and hopefully it can make a dent.
And with social media now, it's just I'm not on social media. I'm not on Facebook or anything like that. But the younger kids that are coming in, you have to teach them Now, you can't talk about this. You cannot post anything about this. You will get sued for the rest of your life if you say anything. So it's, you got to keep quiet about it and let it come out, and then you can talk about it. It may be a year or two, but, keep it quiet. It makes it more a surprise.
And that's how it should be, because when you invest so much into a movie, I mean, it's nice to keep it secret, because if you are doing something that is horror or gore related, you want to, hit them with a trailer at some point and
absolutely
build some
not
suspension.
Even in the trailer, and just on the movie, and then, oh my God, that's so great.
Yeah. I mean, Blair Witch was a great example of, how using social media at its origins to kind of, spread awareness about this faux/real story, and it just took off like gangbusters. Yeah.
That started it.
And not just social media, but like the internet in general was in its infancy at that time in 1999.
Right.
Nobody really, by 1999, people still had no idea what the internet was. Yeah, it exploded in 95, 96 with America Online. But even in 1999, I mean, they were still doing classes at the library, teaching people how to use the internet and how to work the search engine, the search bar. Google hadn't been invented yet. Google wouldn't come around for another 5 years, so we were in the dark.
Yeah, and before the internet and all that, we'd have to go take meetings. So
exactly, face to face,
travel across town and have a meeting with the director, and let's get together. Here, I'm going to show you my designs. No internet. You can't send anything. You have to go and spend time and do that. Sometimes it's a half a day just doing that, and you've lost that half a day if you don't have if it's only you and another assistant doing things. So, those were the days, but they've changed, and that's okay.
That's the benefit of technology. You can just, FaceTime instead of actually tracking across
I think I really used that on the X-Files for the first, even though I only did 2 seasons. That's when it really hit at that point, sending back and forth designs and not having to go and do meetings until, but a pre-production meeting and then the actual meeting for the show. So we do 2 or 3 meetings, but everything else design wise was done through the internet to show them.
Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
I like how modest you are, Matthew, when you say, I only did 2 seasons of the X-Files. It's not only like one of the biggest television shows in the history of television. Oh, by the way, it's back on the air right now.
It's still one of my favorite shows. Chris was just so great, and Frank Spotnitz. And I ended up working on Night Stalker with Frank. And
yeah.
Short-lived. Yeah.
That great new version of Night Stalker.
Yeah, well, whatever. But I couldn't wait to get the new scripts on the X-Files. It was like a kid in the candy store, man. Just getting that script and sitting down and going over it. Oh, my gosh, we have to do this week. Oh, yeah. Getting excited about it and then getting frightened about, how are we going to do this in a week?
Plus, it's also amazing if you look at the X-Files and how many amazing directors have actually come through the X-Files.
Like James
I mean,
Bond.
I just kind of revisited some of the early series, and I noticed David Nutter was directing those, and then he went on to do Game of Thrones, and I mean, he directed so many wonderful low-budget movies, in the early days, and then have something like that. I mean, and plus, Darren Morgan, I mean, who it seems like he's been over at the X-Files forever. I mean, it seems like, wasn't he the Fluke man? And now he's basically producing over there now?
Yeah. It's, I was chasing Chris down before they were going to do the new series, trying to say, hey, I really want to work on we're taking it to Vancouver. I said, okay, never mind. At least I get to talk to you again.
Because that was season 5 when they switched from Vancouver to LA.
Yeah, it was
the new series
between the when the first movie came out.
No, I'm talking about the new takeoff on X
Oh, the
Files.
not reimagining, but the
Whatever.
event.
Yeah,
Yeah, seasons 10 and 11.
yeah, exactly.
Is there
But
anything you look back on that you like wish you hadn't done? I mean, I mean, I kind of again, I kind of was like the Night Stalker, only because I didn't think the Night Stalker needed to be redone, especially considering Darren McGavin's version is so iconic and
oh my gosh, I remember just being frightened out of my skull when
right.
I was watching that on television.
It was such a
But
good
to work
show.
on it, no, yes, I understand what you're saying, but it was just another makeup effect for me, and it was cool stuff to do.
Hmm.
But yeah, I kind of wish they hadn't done that, but I'm glad I worked on it. You
Yeah, I
know?
mean, because either way, a paycheck is a paycheck, and
Yeah.
sometimes
Well,
you might do.
and
I mean,
it
sometimes that
was
happens, and
it was so
sometimes
yeah, it was
Sometimes
so
it's
great to work on The Omen.
sometimes it's
Uh,
Hollywood land. Sometimes it's epic movie.
exactly. Well, yeah.
I mean they can't all be winners,
No,
but
you got to keep.
we enjoy them for what
Lab,
they're worth.
running a lab, you have to keep the doors open. You have to keep.
Absolutely, you got to pay the bills.
Yeah. I mean,
So
King. I
you
mean,
do whatever you have to do, and sometimes those great shows come through, or you just take it work for work. You can't pick and choose. That's why when I started in television, I was doing old movies before, and I do some series. Every once in a while, I'll do some mini-series television. But I think once X Files came around, I looked at it and go, shit, I can make a lot of money on this on television, and not be stuck up about it. Oh, I only do films. So I was going back and forth from film to television, and it was a good moneymaker. And then television just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and CSI came by, and it was a good moneymaker for us. Plus, we did some pretty cool stuff on CSI.
Yeah, and plus, what the work is consistent because with TV, I mean, it will always keep going on, and now we have
Constantly.
so many different platforms and mediums now where we have channels.
Right, and now they're only doing 12 episodes, 10 episodes. We were doing 24 episodes on CSI when we started on the fifth season, and
That's a long
that's like
production.
9 months of steady work, guys. So television at that point, I think a lot of makeup effects. Oh no, I don't do television. I only do film. It's like, well, you're not being a good businessman.
No, exactly. You need to balance and
You're not being a good businessman and thinking about this the right way.
Was it
yeah,
when you this is the last question I have, and then Billy, if you got one last one.
sure.
When you're given a movie, like any film in particular, do is it do you have to constantly keep going to the producers, the director, with like, we need money for this, that, and the other thing, or are you always able to work within the budget that they give you?
Well, when they come to me, they'll say, "Okay, here's the breakdown of what we need," or "Here's the script. You read it and break it down." Now I say, "Well, you tell me what makeup effects you do. You're using me to break this down. You just tell me what makeup effects you
Oh,
need,
okay.
and I'll give you a budget. And if you accept it, because we've said this is the budget, and of course it's going to change if your director says I want this different, I want this different, it's going to change. But if I said on a budget, I'm going to stick to that. My word is my word. If you're going to come back and say I'm going to need this, obviously the budget's going to go up. But if you give me a budget and something that we have agreed on, then that's what it's going to be done for. Now, I may spend out of my pocket on some things, making it better because I'm just that way, but I'm a man of my word, and I'll do this for you. And I think that's why I was so successful in this business, is I was very honest with how I did budgets and worked with people.
Yeah.
Billy?
Um, I think if being a last question, from one makeup artist to another makeup artist,
Mm-hmm.
For people who want to get into the trade, what would you say to someone who wants to make monsters, a younger generation that has an interest? What words of wisdom would you pass on to someone that wants to do this for a living?
Just follow your heart's desire. I mean, on your own or with a friend or whatever, just do as many makeup effects as you can on your own, just on your downtime. Sculpt, make creatures, do monsters, just to build your portfolio up and just to gain some knowledge of how things are being done, and work on anything you can. You're not going to make a living like I had towards now or whatever, but you need to start out someplace. So,
absolutely, yeah.
You may get $5 an hour for doing something, but if you love it, you don't care. You don't care because you have to have the passion for this.
I agree. It's the passion and drive. If you're able to find that, and if it's there and at the right time, and
absolutely,
and I mean, it sounds like for you had a wonderful, I mean, it seems like over 30 years in the business, and being able to pinpoint, whatever it is, and some people can do it, and I mean, I was lucky enough where, it was actually Charlie Van's Ghoulies.
Uh-huh.
And I said 15, and now I've just celebrated 15 years in the industry.
That's great.
So it makes me laugh, just kind of pinpointing that.
And it's people ask me sometimes later when I had a big the shop and running it constantly and having 10 to 20 people that I had to support and everything. It's like, what really scares you? I said, what really scares me more is trying to make payroll every week.
Exactly.
Try not to do makeup effects or any blood effects. It's like trying to make the payroll and I'm not going to get paid this week because I have to pay my, because that check's not coming in or something like that. But it's just the passion and the love for this that's going to carry a person through. And there may be ups and downs. Be true to yourself and be true to who you're working with, no matter how much they take advantage of you, something, because that too shall pass and you'll go on to the next project.
I leave you with this last question, Matt. What is your favorite film of all time? Even it doesn't have to be because of makeup.
Oh man, well, like I think Albert Nobbs, because it was such a passionate film and it was a labor of love for myself and also for Glenn Close, and it was just, not talking about horror, but it was just one of those nice even keel that everybody got along, they loved what you do. It was a collaborative effort, and Albert Nobbs had to be it, I think, to date.
That movie pops up a lot connected to your name when you look you up on Google or something like that. I don't know if you've noticed that.
It's what? I'm sorry?
Do you ever Google yourself?
Every once in a while.
Yeah.
See what's going on. See who's talking shit.
That son of a bitch gave me the horrible rash when I'm on the set of Daredevil or Spider-Man or the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. No. If you Googled yourself over the last 7 or 8 years, that movie pops up for your Google picture.
It was made for $8 million, and it was just it was just ups and downs trying to get the film made, and it was made in one of my favorite countries, Ireland, and it was just one of those films that comes along every once in a while in your career that you relish, you just love, and that was it.
I actually also meant, what is your favorite film of all time? Not the one that you worked on, but just your...
Oh.
Yeah.
Shoot.
I mean, maybe a top 5, because that is a pretty hard question to just simplify with just one.
I love Dark Crystal. I just loved Dark Crystal because it was fantasy. It was all of that. I hear of course, they're making another one, but
Yeah,
that
Netflix.
was it was artistry. It was pure artistry. It was puppetry. It was no digital, digital in its infancy with rotoscoping and everything. But it was just such a I love that film.
I have a copy on 35 millimeter in a case. The trailer for Dark Crystal.
Of course, Chris would have that.
No, I do, and I have also Gremlins and the Karate Kid, and I got them at a comic book
I'm jealous of Gremlins.
Okay, we're such geeks. Okay,
I got them at a comic book store for $5 a piece, and they're actually worth like a lot of money too. I found out. I went on eBay afterwards, and I found out the trailer for like a copy of oh God, what was it? The Lord of the Rings goes for like $1,000.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
And Lord of the Rings came out what, like 8? If you can believe, the Lord of the Rings came out 17 years ago by now.
I know.
I would probably pay that for the Frighteners or Dead Alive. Maybe not Lord of the Rings if it's that much.
Well, hey, Billy, they still had Fists of the North Star. Do you want that trailer?
I don't have a big sum like that I can just drop at this point in time.
It's only
maybe
like
a raid
$5
check a little later.
Well, there was one of the other people who does horror radio, Trick or Treat Radio, on their booth at Rocket Shock a couple of years ago. They had a copy of the trailer 35 millimeter of Alien Resurrection and a couple other really just not so great films. I think it was like Star Trek Insurrection was also in the box.
But actually, Alien, what's his name directed that? I mean, he's actually a pretty good director.
David Fincher.
Yeah, David Fincher.
That was Alien 3.
Oh, Alien 3.
Yeah, Alien Resurrection was the French director.
Oh, yeah.
The French, that was the one that had Ron Perlman. Being a badass once again.
Yeah, and it was with the script by Josh Whedon. Jean-Pierre Jeunet.
Okay.
Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who also did like Amelia and The City of Lost Children.
Yeah, City of Lost Children. That's a pretty damn good movie too.
There you go. Yeah. Well, hey, Matt, we really appreciate you coming on the show to just take a crack at everything you've worked on. I mean, the show could go on and on and on and on if we went through every single film.
Thank you so much for having me on, and anytime you want me back, I'll come back. So
maybe we'll do a big thing with Salem if we get to it for a podcast I do called Film Dungeon. The Dead TV podcast. We talk about canceled television shows in the horror, science fiction, fantasy genre. So maybe one day we'll do. We'll do something that you have covered in the television, and we can have you on for a whole episode if you watch the episode, and then we'll have you on for that episode, the one particular episode for the podcast.
Sure, I'll be there for you. That's not a problem.
Cool. We'll take a look to see what we got coming up that you've worked on in television. Billy, thank you for joining me to talk with Matthew.
It was a pleasure, and Matthew, it was a pleasure as well having a dialogue with you.
Yes, absolutely.
Matthew, why don't you give away where people can find you on the internet?
The what?
Give away where people can find you on the internet.
They can go to my website. It's www.wmcreationsinc.com.
And by the way, feel free to pass on to your co-conspirators that you work with to if they would like to come on the show as well. I emailed them at the same time I emailed you.
Absolutely, that'd be great.
Cool.
Thank you.
And again, thank you very much, Billy, for joining me.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, guys.